the biggest mistake we make with money is trying to fix it too quickly. Can I ask you a question? When was the last time you simply looked at your money without trying to change anything? Most of us don't avoid money because we're irresponsible. We avoid it because we're afraid. Afraid we'll discover that we've spent too much, afraid that we've fallen behind, afraid that we'll have to make changes that we're really not ready to make. So instead, we download the budgeting app, we promise ourselves next month will be the month. We look for other savings tips, but we've skipped the most important step. So let's jump into it. Here's what I want you to do this week. I want you to grab all of your bank statements, all of your credit card statements, and I don't want you to highlight anything. I don't want you to total anything. I just want you to read them. Read them line by line. Go through and see what's the story that it's telling. Then I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. What surprised me about the story that it told? What do I spend without thinking? And what no longer reflects the life that I'm trying to build? That's your homework. One thing that I've noticed working in finance over the years is that income wasn't only the deciding factor. I'd see people make, various salaries from extreme wealth to, just barely getting by. You would think that the wealthy are the ones that had it fully in control, and that the ones that are just making it day to day were the ones that were overwhelmed month after month. But in reality, that's not what it was like. The overwhelm ranged right through the spectrum. Whether you were wealthy, whether you were just getting by, overwhelm seems to encompass all income level types. It was then that I realized that the difference wasn't always what they earned. It was how they developed their financial habits. The people who regularly looked over their money time after time made better judgment calls and better decisions. I remember there was this one case where a family of, I would say, average income wealth had a visitor come to visit them. And it was around the holidays, so it was winter time here. And they slipped on the step going into their home. And unfortunately, this visitor fell and broke a hip. So they were admitted into the hospital. And unfortunately, the visitor didn't purchase insurance when they left the country, their home originating country. And so as they entered the hospital, they were incurred this massive bill because, a broken hip requires surgery, it requires, extensive rehab, etc. And so between the doctor's bills and the cost of the surgery and the overnight stays and the rehab, the bill was just mounting to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this family, I remember them coming to see me, and the look on their face was just utter distraught. And obviously nobody would ever plan for something like this to happen. But this is where I'm saying that the financial habits and the decisions that we make are so important. We have to prepare for the unexpected. And it doesn't mean that they have 100,000 laying around in their bank account, but what it means is to think forward thinking. If you have someone coming from another country, then perhaps insurance would be the first thing on your mind, depending on their age, but anybody can slip and fall on ice, right? So you kind of have to weigh these things and think about whether or not there is an advantage to doing something like that. And then I remember this other family, and actually she had, I think it was like 6 kids, and one of them got very sick. And because they were such a big family, they wanted a room that could kind of accommodate them. They didn't want to leave the child alone. And so they wanted to be all together in this one room and not have to share it with somebody else. Well, the cost of a private room can be expensive as well. And this child, because she was sick, she was going to be in hospital for quite some time. So again, I remember them coming, walking down the hall. I could see it on their face, and she had one baby in arm, one in her hand, holding her hand, walking down the aisle and ready to talk to me about the bill. And she, she was of, I would say, lesser means, but to be honest, they had everything organized. They had what their plan was, how long they thought that the doctor had told them how long they thought they would stay, how much it was going to cost, how they were going to figure out how to pay for the bill. They had it all broken down, and I haven't even had the conversation with them at that point. And it just goes to show you the difference of, it doesn't matter what income level you are. It's the habits that you're building over time and how conscious you are of your current situation and things to come that are unexpected, and if you're prepared and ready for them. So you can see how awareness, being aware of your financial situation, it looks different for everyone. And some people, they just naturally avoid kind of looking at their money. They don't want to have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. Figure it out later, And then other people, they're on their computers every day. They're checking their accounts. They're making sure it's balancing. It's quite the extreme from one to the other. And then there's others that are kind of in between, right? They put other people's needs first. They're caring for maybe an elderly loved one. They're caring for their children. They're kind of self-sacrificing in a way. And forget to enjoy life entirely. And that's exactly the reason why I created the Identity Money Quiz. And it's just for you to understand what your role is in your life and how that trickles down to the decisions that you make financially. Because you might be asking yourself, I don't understand why I'm not getting ahead. I make good money. I don't understand why I'm not getting ahead. I'm here busy taking care of everyone. I'm being the responsible one. I don't get why it's not coming together the way I want it to. And so this quiz, it really kind of uncovers some of the deeper things that are core beliefs, who we think we are. And then what it does is just kind of walk you through why you maybe act this way, why you make these type of decisions. And as we continue that journey, you'll discover how it is that we can make a slight changes without changing the person who we are. So it really becomes, awareness is such an important thing, just to be aware of the type of person that we are, because it all relates to the way we treat our money. But before you go, I want to leave you with one question. If someone looked at your spending over the last 3 months, if I got a little sneak peek at your finances, what would it say matters to you the most? Right? So when you're doing that exercise, that homework, I want you to kind of think to yourself, if someone was taking a bird's eye view of your finances, what would they say is your most important thing? Not what you think matters, but what your spending actually is telling you. Because again, sometimes what we think and what's actually happening is two different things. And that's why this is part of the overall framework called order, getting your finances in order. And we're really focusing on the observe portion at this point, right? We're just observing. We're taking out our bank statements. We're looking to see how it is. What does the picture tell us? And then figuring out what our identity is around money. Because what you're spending says it matters. If you haven't had a chance to check out the full framework overview, I'll link the video right here, because next week we're going to start talking about the second step in the order method, which is ranking those priorities. Because once you know where your money is going, then you get to decide the path you want to take. So I'm just going to leave you with this. A 1% change in the right direction, it's still progress. So I'll see you next week.